everybody, I'm Indy Martin, the artist, and I'll be walking you through the time lapse of Insane Scholar. This is a commission I finished recently. It's for rpota.com, and that's the online home of the Shroud of the Avatar role-playing community. And this was one of the contest winners, Ulthadir. Congratulations, won the monthly contest for a character piece by me. It's a giveaway of that site. It's pretty awesome. There's been a whole lot of them done so far. I think we're up to like about a dozen. Anyway, but you can see here, my first step with any client is to go through and just free sketch a couple of ideas for a composition or a character or whatever. Sometimes it's one if I've got a really good concept of what the client wants. Sometimes it's up to 4. And then there was actually a break between these 2 videos where I sent it off for feedback, and he got back to me and said he liked the sort of claustrophobic feel of this layout. So we're going with this. I work in Photoshop CS6. You can see the frame there. And I use a tool called the Painter's Wheel for my colors. I really like that. I recommend it. I think it works with any versions of Photoshop above CS4, I think. Don't quote me on that. And then I've got a Wacom Intuos 4 tablet that I use for, well, everything digital. It's treated me well for about 6 years now. So you can see here, I'm working on a couple different layers and then merging down to one once I'm happy with them. I'm just using a basic hard brush. I don't use a whole lot of tricky brushes. I'm honestly not that technically savvy, so yeah, whatever I can use in Photoshop that most resembles a real-life tool is generally what I stick to, either hard or soft round brushes. But this is all with hard brush because this is going to be more of this is my lower tier digital level commission, and it's more of a comic style in that it's a little faster to color and render and doesn't take the time of trying to get to a realistic place. Photorealistic, that is. So here I'm finishing the line art for the client. This is another point at which I stop the video and then send it off to him and make sure he's happy with where it's at, because it's a lot easier to change a piece of line art than it is to change a final flatted and colored piece. So in all of my commissions, my client work, I build in a couple levels of points of feedback just to make sure I'm on the client's page. I found that the more the client is involved in the decision making along the way, the less pain it is for everybody involved. If there's changes that need to be made, they can be made at the earliest possible stage. So here the client got back to me. He really liked the line art, and I'm moving on to flats. So yeah, the points of feedback are that initial preliminary sketch, super loose, super sketchy. Sometimes it's nothing but shapes, but that gives me a really early way to be on the same page as the client. So we start off from the closest to their vision as I can, and then right after line art, black and white. You know, that's a second stage. Then right after flats, before I start doing any shading, I get back to them just to make sure that they're okay with the general palette I'm using, and if it's their character, make sure like the hair color is spot on. In this case, he told me he needed it to go a little bit darker, so you'll see eventually I get that changed over. I think here is where I broke, so here you can see me changing his hair to darker, and then pulling out the highlights when I'm rendering it. And then yeah, of course the final piece is their last chance to go, okay, I like this, or I don't like how you shaded this, or can we kind of tweak this color? But most of the time, no changes are really necessary throughout the piece. But it's also fun for the client, you know, everybody likes to see, most people like to see the nuts and bolts and see their piece, their character as it's progressing through, you know, becoming a final piece. So it's kind of cool for everybody to be able to see. And here I'm using a lasso grab tool to do my shading for these lower tier color pieces. This is the easiest and fastest way I can get it done and still have it look finished. You know, you want it to look finished. And I found that just by using a round brush, it ended up looking too airbrushed and too too fuzzy. You know, it didn't look finished. It looked like it needed a couple more layers of work. Whereas the lasso grab tool, it's still relatively new for me, but I really enjoy that. And at some point I might make a more slowed down tutorial on how I use the lasso grab tool. But not for this one. We're almost done. I strongly recommend K. Michael Russell's tutorials on, no, cell phone, I was doing so well. Oh, you guys are just gonna have to deal with the cell phone ringer. I don't want to do the audio again. Here I'm just doing a few final color adjustments to get it to where I wanted it to be. Adding some glow on the candles. Doing some last minute shading of areas that I might have missed. I always have my flats layer. Once I finish flats, I leave that on a separate layer. My outline for these pieces hover above that, and then between the flat and the outline layer is my paint layer, and I'll pull generally I'll isolate colors and pull them into separate layers, use the lasso grab tool, and then shade that color to my satisfaction before I merge it back down. So at the end, if I've done everything perfectly, which is extraordinarily rare, I'll have a background layer, a flat layer, a painted layer, the outline, and then any sort of effects or glow that I have on top of that. And that's my final. Thanks for sticking with it and checking out this video. Please support my art at www.patreon.com/tortoisehaircreations. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.